We would like to welcome everybody to another episode of the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge, presented by Georgia Alabama Sports Live. And you are listening to us on WQEE 99.1 FM The Key, home of Southern Sports, out of Noonan, Georgia. I am Richard Holdridge, and I'm glad to be here. I hope you had a great weekend. We have got a jam-packed show for you. I'm going to break down all the action and highlights from high school football, college football, the NFL. I'll even talk about the Braves clinching the postseason, trying to go for their sixth straight division title in the NL East. But first, let's go ahead and talk about some of the things that happened over the weekend. Thrift Behringer and I called the Flint River Academy Calvary Christian game in Woodbury, Georgia. I got to say, it was a success, even though Calvary did not come out with the win. Flint River was very hospitable, and they're a very good team, as we talked about on the show earlier today. But something did happen with the broadcast. The Facebook page for Georgia Alabama Sports Live got suspended for no reason. We have no idea what happened. So we created a new Facebook page. So go and like that Facebook page on Georgia Alabama Sports Live. The game is actually, it was broadcasted on YouTube. You can catch a copy of the game on the new Facebook page. And we are also on Twitter. So you're able to catch all of the content that we have. We do two shows, Sunday nights and Tuesday nights. Thrift and I just did a show approximately an hour ago. And so this is for the radio station. I'm going to break down all the sports that happened this weekend. This is my favorite weekend of sports because we have high school football, college football, and the NFL all happening at the same time. This was week 1 in the NFL, week 2 in college football, week 4 in high school football. So it started off with Thursday night. You had Northside beating Shaw 33-7. Thrift and I called that game. And then we called Flint River Academy taking on Calvary Christian. Flint River Academy is a team in the GIAA. They look like they could compete for a state championship. They defeated Calvary 42-0. And it was just an electric atmosphere. High school game day was there. We had the athletic director for Calvary Christian, Coach Steve Smith, there as he was the celebrity guest picker. A big shout out to Joe Howard. He is the public address announcer for Flint River Academy, and they were just so hospitable, and it was just a great atmosphere. And just a shout out to Toygar for having such a great broadcast. He's just been an outstanding producer. Chris Gates. Also, we've got just a team of great producers and great talent for Georgia Alabama Sports Live as we continue growing our brand and creating the brand new Facebook page. We're hoping to get more content on that Facebook page, so check it out. Other games in the Chattahoochee Valley, the Carver Tigers hosting Northeast at Otis Spencer Stadium. This was a game where Northeast jumped up to a 19-6 lead. Carver came back. They cut it to 19-18, and then Northeast got a touchdown that sealed the victory. 25-18, Carver falls to 2-1, and they will take on Springwood, a 7A team, next week. You got Harris County. They got the win over Howard, 27-19, and Harris County is now 3-1 on the season, taking on Hardaway next week at Danny Durham Field in Hamilton, Georgia. And then the Pulpwood Classic, the Callaway Cavaliers, they bounce back. They get the 38-6 victory over Heard County, and they are 2-1. They go into a bye, and then they take on Redan in a couple of weeks as they start region play. You got the Glenwood Gators. They defeated Bessemer Academy 51-7, and they will have a massive game this Friday at the Swamp as the Glenwood Gators taking on the Lee Scott Academy Warriors. It is a rematch of the AISA championship game that took place in Montgomery last year. The St. Anne Pacelli Vikings, they are on a roll. 3 straight wins as they defeated Mount DeSales Academy by a score of 48-7. And they will take on Stratford Academy at Dimel Field this Friday night. You can catch the game on Viking TV. It is a rematch of the GIAA championship. The Pacelli Vikings taking on Stratford Academy. The Noonan Cougars, the 6A school out of Noonan, Georgia, they got the 21-0 victory over the Hardaway Hawks. Hardaway is yet to win a game. They fall to 0-4. The first region game for the Jordan Red Jackets, Ace Charter defeated them in Macon by a score of 54-0. And then this game I completely whiffed on. During high school game day, I called Enterprise on the upset because they upset Auburn last week, 17-16. They were at home, 2-0, taking on the Central Red Devils, also 2-0. I will never bet against the Central Red Devils again. Central answered the call and got the victory by a score of 48-7. And Central is 3-0. Andrew Alford, he is on fire. 13 touchdowns on the season, and he's got some incredible targets, including the number one recruit in the state of Alabama, Cam Coleman, who is the verbal commit to Texas A&M. Russell County lost in a heartbreaker to Stanhope Elmore, 24-21. Robert Calhoun was on the goal line. They had a chance to take the lead. They could have tied it with a field goal, and Stanhope Elmore with the interception. Russell County falls to 0-2, and they will take on Carver Montgomery next week in Seal, Alabama. Prattville gets the win over Smith Station 43-9. They avenged the loss last year at TC Britton Field at Panther Field, where Smith Station got the upset win. I was at the game. I called the game for the CW Jabama, and that was an incredible moment for the Smith Station Panthers. Auburn getting a narrow win down in Dothan, 28-27. They go to 2-1. The Dothan Wolves fall to 2-1. This was a rematch of that second round game in the playoffs last year. The Opelika Bulldogs, they go to 2-1, getting the 44-6 victory over Percy Julian. The LaGrange Grangers, they were able to answer the call in Thomaston, getting the win over undefeated Upson Lee by a score of 42-7. And now LaGrange, they are looking good as they are 3-1 on the season. The Valley Rams, a big win in overtime over the Beauregard Hornets. Valley goes to 2-1. Beauregard falls to 2-1. And Beulah, how about the Beulah Bobcats getting not only a region win, they pick up their second win of the season. They are 2-1 after beating Sachs 38-24. Manchester suffered their first loss of the season, losing a heartbreaker to Lamar County in Manchester by a score of 17-14. And North Clayton, they get the win over Chatco, 34-13. Chatco has yet to win a game. Hawkinsville, a narrow win over Marion County, 41-40. This is Marion County's first loss of the season. Schley County in overtime, avenging the loss from last year, defeating Blakely County 48-42. And Schley County is firing on all cylinders. They look like a team that could compete for the state title in Class 1A Division II. You got Central at Talbotton getting their first victory of the season, defeating Twiggs County 14-6. And guess what? Central at Talbotton hosts Schley County in Talbotton, Georgia next week. That's going to be a massive game. Lee Scott Academy, no problem over Morgan Academy, 51-7, as head coach Buster Daniel gets that Lee Scott Academy Warrior defense, offense ready to go at the Swamp next Friday. Myself and Thrift Behringer will be there for Georgia Alabama Sports Live. The Handley Tigers still undefeated, getting the win over Jacksonville 32-24. You have Reeltown defeating Lafayette 41-6. And Laverne, they defeat Barber County 42-0. Barber County earlier last week got their first win against Calhoun for the first time in 10 years. And Barber County will be in action this week taking on Lafayette. Notasulga, they get the win over Otagoville 50-12. The Lochapoka Indians still undefeated at 3-0. They get the 54-18 victory over Verbena. Sumter County, they get the win over Crisp County 24-15. And Sumter County, they will host Northside next week. Chambers Academy, they defeat Crenshaw Christian Academy by a score of 41-14. Now let's go into the Noonan schools. I already talked about the Noonan Cougars. They did defeat Hardaway 21-0. How about the East Coweta Indians? 4-0 on the season. They defeat Sandy Creek 31-14. Congratulations to the East Coweta Indians, as they are a 7A school in Noonan and they are undefeated. Carrollton defeating Villa Rica 50-0. You have Central of Carrollton defeating McIntosh 40-21. McIntosh's first loss of the season. They are 3-0. Northgate jumps up to 3-1 as they defeat Griffin 34-3. So yeah, McIntosh lost their first game of the season. So McIntosh is 3-1, Northgate is 3-1, and then finally the Eufaula Tigers getting a 56-14 win over Heedland. So next week, Thursday night, 7 o'clock, myself and Thrift Behringer will be at Otis Spencer Stadium for Georgia-Alabama Sports Live, as it is a region game between the Kendrick Cherokees and the Spencer Green Wave, the Battle of South Columbus. As I-185 separates both schools, this is a rivalry game. Both teams are 1-2, and you can catch the action on Georgia-Alabama Sports Live's YouTube channel and Facebook page. And then on Friday, Thrift and I will be at the Swamp, Sammy Howard Field, 3-0 Lee Scott Academy Warriors taking on the 4-0 Glenwood Gators. That is going to be an epic game. High school game day will be there at 6:30, so you don't want to miss it. Head coach Dusty Perdue is going to be the celebrity guest picker. I'm excited about that. When we did high school game day for week 1 at Glenwood, it was a lot of fun. We just had a blast. Some of the key games for week 5 include Stratford at Pacelli. You have Lanier Christian Academy taking on Calvary. Opelika taking on Central. This is the WRBL's Prep Zones game of the week. Southwest is taking on Jordan. Shaw is taking on Columbus. Hardaway taking on Harris County. Troup County undefeated. They had a bye last week. They are going to travel to Fayetteville to take on Whitewater. You have Manchester at Marion County. Brookstone taking on Mount Zion. Brookstone 0-2, looking for their first win. Head coach Rance Gillespie. Brooks Roney is their new quarterback. He's taken over for quarterback Andrew Alford, who's now at Central, but he has a very special target in Chris Vickerson. And Brookstone trying to get their first win, taking on the undefeated Mount Zion team. Northside travels to Americus, Georgia to take on Sumter County. LaGrange is 2-1, taking on Stars Mill. That's 1-2. Enterprise taking on Smith Station. Carver Montgomery taking on Russell County. You have Auburn taking on Jag in Montgomery, Alabama. Beauregard is taking on Tallahassee. Sylacauga taking on Valley. Greenville is taking on Eufaula. Beulah is taking on Wellborn. Barber County is at Lafayette. Lynette is taking on the undefeated Highland Home, as head coach Chip Siegel 2-1 on the season after getting a big win over Horseshoe Bend. And Lochapoka is taking on Central of Haynesville. And finally, Notasulga is taking on Maplesville. So what I do on this show is I try to cover all the high schools in and around the Chattahoochee Valley and the Noonan area, because this is a show that is broadcasted on Noonan. So I wanted to make sure to give them some love as well. So we're going to go ahead and take a break. And when we come back, I'm going to have my reaction on all the games in college football on Saturday, including all local teams. I will get into LaGrange College, Point University, West Georgia, and I will talk about all the local teams to the Chattahoochee Valley and some of the intriguing matchups. What were my surprises? And we also have a new AP poll out. You don't want to go anywhere. It's a Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the show. This is the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge, presented by Georgia-Alabama Sports Live, and you are listening to us on WQEE 99.1 FM, The Key, out of Noonan, Georgia. And let's go ahead and break down some college football. I will get into the NFL shortly. I know that it just happened, but we're going to go ahead and we're going to break down all the college football games. We're going to talk about the Braves. We're going to talk about the NFL. This is going to be a great show, so stick around. It should be a lot of fun. I want to start with the local team here, LaGrange College. We're going to start with the LaGrange College Panthers. They had their opener against Berry College. Not the way they wanted to go for their first-year head coach. Berry College ends up winning the game 70-3. They go to 2-0. And LaGrange College will be on the road in Virginia, taking on Ferris University next. Point University, they get a very close win over Thomas University by a score of 20-17. So congratulations to Coach Zegers and the Point University Skyhawks as they will travel to Lindsey Wilson. And finally, Texas A&M Keensville defeats West Georgia by a score of 20-17. Remember, West Georgia is making that transition to NCAA Division I starting in 2024. Some of the other local teams, the Mercer Bears, they get the 48-22 victory over Morehead State. Kennesaw State, their final year in the FCS, they are considered an independent. They travel up to Finley Stadium in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and they lose a heartbreaker, 27-20, as that is the first loss of the season for the Kennesaw State Owls. Georgia Tech, they get into the win column, 48-13. You know, the barometer for the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, I'm not sure if Haynes Keene is a good quarterback. I mean, he did pass for over 300 yards in week 1, but they have a huge test coming up this week, taking on Ole Miss. That game is going to be 7:30 on the SEC Network in Oxford, Mississippi. You got Georgia State. Congratulations to Georgia State getting the win, and they are 2-0. They defeat UConn 35-14. Georgia Southern is 2-0 as they defeat UAB 49-35. And let's talk about Georgia. They were playing Ball State. Little sluggish at first, but the punt return really flipped the momentum for Georgia. And Mekhi Muse, I think he's starting to become a star. Carson Beck will get more familiar with this offense. Yeah, they defeated Ball State 45-3, and they're still ranked number 1 in the AP poll. I want to see how they play against South Carolina next week. I want to see if this is going to be a competitive game going into the third quarter, because I can't tell how good this Georgia team is. Now let's talk about Alabama. Everybody was watching this game. Everybody that I know. It was Alabama and Texas. I'm here to tell you, for the first time in over 10 years, I would say let's go back to 2007. This is the first time I watched an Alabama game where there was a team that was clearly better than the Tide. Texas pushed Alabama around. Jalen Milroe had 2 ill-advised interceptions. Alabama had 10 penalties. They were making mistakes left and right. Texas was the more poised team. Not only did they run the football well, play action pass, Quinn Ewers, who was injured in the game last year. He has 2 incredible wide receivers. A.D. Mitchell, the former wide receiver from Georgia that entered the transfer portal, and Xavier Worthy, who might be the best wide receiver in college football. He could possibly be. Texas had all the confidence in the world. Steve Sarkisian was rolling the dice, going for it on 4th down. Texas defeats Alabama 34-24. This was the largest game, largest deficit by a Nick Saban coach team at home in his career. Nick Saban has not lost a game like this at home to a non-conference opponent. This is the first time that Texas beat Alabama since 1982. Texas jumps all the way to number 4 in the AP poll. Alabama drops to number 10. This could be a disastrous year for Alabama. We're talking the Mike Shula era in 2005 when they won 10 games and went to a Cotton Bowl. Yes, I'm talking about that Alabama team, not the one that Nick Saban in his first year that went 7-6. because there was a lot of promise there. Alabama could fall to single-digit wins this year. The way they played, if they don't fix things fast, I see them losing to Texas A&M. I see them losing to LSU. And I see them losing to Auburn because Auburn plays them tough all the time in the Plains, in the Iron Bowl. Alabama's in trouble. Now, I don't know if the answer is to change a quarterback because Jalen Milroe, he does things that a lot of quarterbacks can't do. He has just the running capability. He's special when he takes off. I mean, he is a dual threat quarterback, and he throws a pretty good deep ball. I'm worried about the play calling. They got to just figure it out. But the dominant Alabama team from the early 2010s, it's over. It's over because you have NIL and the transfer portal. You have an even playing field for the first time in a long time. You've got teams that can go toe-to-toe with Alabama, and Texas was one of those teams. I'm not saying Texas is back to the 2006 level when Mac Brown led them to a national championship, because Texas still has a tough schedule too, but Texas can now run the table and make it into the college football playoff. This was a statement win for the Texas Longhorns, and I know that Quinn Ewers might have been a little nervous when Texas brought in Arch Manning, but I think Ewers is going to be fine, and his draft status just went up as well. So a big win for the Texas Longhorns. Let's talk about the Auburn Tigers. I did not stay up to watch this game from start to finish. I did watch the first half. They were in Berkeley taking on the Cal Bears. This game was a little sluggish. I still think that Peyton Thorne is the right quarterback and Hugh Freeze is the right guy to lead this Auburn team. And they survived 14-10. Cal had a chance to win it at the end, but they played a team in a hostile environment. And yes, it was a Pac-12 team. It was probably one of the bottom tier Pac-12 teams because Cal hasn't been irrelevant in football for years. Probably the last time they were like great was the Aaron Rodgers years back in 2004. Auburn was able to survive. Peyton Thorne did throw 2 touchdown passes. I expect Auburn to beat Samford next week to go 3-0, but their biggest test in 2 weeks when they take on Texas A&M in College Station, and then Georgia in 3 weeks. I still think Auburn is going to win about 8 games, maybe even 9. I mean, I still see them possibly winning the Iron Bowl. I think that's going to be a close game. But the Auburn Tigers had to go all the way on the West Coast. They were able to survive, and that's all you ask for in a college football team. Some of my takeaways from college football. Boy, Colorado is starting to become a national story. There was a lot of mistakes made in this game against Nebraska, but they beat Nebraska 36-14, and Nebraska's 0-2. And boy, people who are big Matt Rule fans, they're probably kicking themselves right now. I mean, it wasn't working out with Scott Frost. I just don't think it's working out with Matt Rule. Nebraska is just not what Nebraska was in the 1990s with their dynasty. Colorado is for real. Shadir Sanders, first 2 games, passing for over 900 yards. He is in the Heisman race right now. He's got 8 touchdowns, and he has weapons everywhere. Jimmy Horn, Travis Hunter. What can you say? I think that Colorado beats Colorado State next week to go 3-0, and we will see what happens when they play Oregon in 2 weeks. But College Game Day has decided to go to Colorado because obviously this is a national story because Deion has led the way. And just think what he can do with a couple of recruiting classes under his belt. Deion has made the difference. Coach Prime has not only coached these players up, but they believe that they could win every game. And they have exceeded expectations starting 2-0. It's really the story in college football right now. Miami, they get a 48-33 win over Texas A&M. I know that Jimbo Fisher's seat is not going to get hot anytime soon. But I'm not saying the U is back. But Tyler Van Dyke, I'm going to say the Miami Hurricanes finally have their quarterback. He had 5 touchdown passes, and Miami has always recruited the skill players. They just got to figure out how to compete with the other teams in the ACC. And when they start winning ACC championships, you know the U is back. I don't know if the University of Miami will ever get back to the glory days in the early 2000s with Larry Coker and Butch Davis, or even the late 1980s with Jimmy Johnson and Dennis Erickson. I watched the documentaries, the U and the U Part 2. It's fascinating. They had NFL players everywhere. I don't know if I could say they have NFL players like that. They still do have some NFL players, but it's not like it was back in the early 2000s or in the 80s and 90s. In order for Miami to get back to that level, I think Mario Cristobal is the coach that can get them there. Look at what he did at Oregon, and he coached under Nick Saban. If they get the quarterback right, I think Miami can really start going on a run. They take on Bethune Cookman this Thursday, and they do play Georgia Tech, and their schedule's a little easy, but then they'll take on Drake May in North Carolina pretty soon. And remember, they got to play Florida State and Tallahassee. They got a tough schedule, but Miami is going to improve in Mario Cristobal's second year. So we have a new AP poll out. There's no surprise. Georgia is number 1, followed by Michigan. You have Florida State going up to number 3, and Texas is number 4, followed by USC. They got a big win over Stanford. You got Ohio State, who I'm not going to say they struggled against Youngstown State, but they only put up 35 points. They're not dominating. Like you had, like, for example, Oklahoma dominated against Arkansas State in week 1, 73-0. And they barely squeaked by SMU. So I can't tell if Oklahoma is any good. Penn State, number 7. Washington, Michael Penix Jr., great quarterback. Washington's going to be one of the top teams in the Pac-12. They're at number 8. Notre Dame at number 9. Notre Dame, they survived against NC State. That was one of my teams that I had on upset alert. They were able to survive, but when they play Ohio State in a couple weeks, this is going to be a game where it can test if Notre Dame is any good. I do believe that Sam Hartman, being a 6th-year COVID senior, giving Notre Dame that experience, kind of like, when Stetson Bennett was 25 years old, still playing at Georgia. The older you get, the more mature you get, and the more, high IQ, and you're able to do play calls. And, it's kind of a huge advantage for having these 5th and 6th-year seniors, and because they gained an extra year because of COVID. Notre Dame is number 9, and Alabama falls to number 10. Alabama plays South Florida in Tampa next week. Yeah, that's a road game where, in Raymond James Stadium, it's going to be the biggest college football game in Raymond James Stadium by far. I love college football. It's been great. But what I'm going to do now is take another commercial break, because when we come back, I'm going to briefly touch up on the Atlanta Braves. They clinch a postseason berth. And I'm going to get into the NFL Week 1, including a big win over the Atlanta Falcons, getting the big win over the Carolina Panthers. And you have some teams that have been kind of shocking. And then I'll talk about some local talent in the Chattahoochee Valley that's really made an impact in the NFL. You don't want to go anywhere. It's a Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge, presented by Georgia Alabama Sports Live. How is everybody doing out there? I hope you are enjoying this day. This is always my favorite time of the year because I get to talk about football, high school football, college football, the NFL. Got a big Monday night game going on as the Buffalo Bills taking on the New York Jets. And I cannot wait for the Manning cast. I always flip it back and forth between that. I actually enjoyed my football Sunday free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket on YouTube TV, but I did not have the NFL Red Zone channel, and I wanted to make sure that I had that. I did watch a little bit of the Falcons. My takeaway on the Atlanta Falcons, they are very good on defense, and they have got two special running backs, Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier. If they get a lead, I feel confident not only they could run the football and hold on to that lead, but their defense can force turnovers. And that's a key ingredient to not fall into the trap of the narrative of the Falcons blowing leads. This game was a little sluggish at first. Yes, they did get the touchdown to go up 7-0. Jesse Bates. Where would the Falcons be without Jesse Bates? Is this not the off-season acquisition of the year? He had 2 interceptions and a forced fumble. He forced 3 turnovers on Carolina. Yes, they were starting a rookie quarterback, but it was Bryce Young. He was the overall number 1 pick. Carolina, when it was tied 10-10, the Falcons get the ball back. Tyler Algier with a touchdown run. Now they're up 17-10. And when the Falcons got the ball back again, my train of thought was, oh, Arthur Smith's going to be conservative. Desmond Ridder hasn't really shown anything. He hasn't even passed for 100 yards. A lot of the stuff that Desmond Ridder was doing was checkdowns. Drake London wasn't even involved. At this point in the game, Kyle Pitts wasn't even involved. And then Drake London, or then Desmond Ridder, threw just an absolute beauty, a 44-yard pass to Kyle Pitts that set up another touchdown, and the Falcons get a comfortable win over the Carolina Panthers by a score of 24-10. If you're a Falcons fan, what is your takeaway on this? Because I feel like I was getting nervous. I was tweeting in the beginning of that first half, Falcons need to bench Desmond Ridder. He is not the quarterback. He is not the answer. Look, a win is a win. Desmond Ridder started improving in the second half, and he can maybe figure out this offense a little bit better. They take on the Green Bay Packers next week. I'll preview that later this week. I think the Falcons will be fine. In my opinion, because the Buccaneers beat the Vikings, that was shocking. You had the Saints winning. Maybe this NFC South is not as bad as people think it is, but this is a big win over a division rival. At the Mercedes-Benz, this is a place where you're supposed to win, and the Falcons do get the victory. And so they're 1-0 for the first time since 2017. That was the last time they made the playoffs. Falcons winning their first game on opening day, that is always a big deal. And hopefully the Falcons can get this momentum when they play Green Bay next week. All right, many of you know that I am a San Francisco 49ers fan. Born and raised, 5 Super Bowls. Yes, they were hard times in the early 2000s. But I'm here to say that Brock Purdy is the real deal. He is the real deal Holyfield, I'm telling you. Look, Steeler fans have been talking a lot of smack this week. In fact, I even said on my show last week that the Steelers are going to win. The 49ers were only favored by 1.5 because there's still a lot of unknowns. But the 49ers came into Pittsburgh and punched them in the mouth. Brock Purdy with 2 touchdown passes to Brandon Ayuk. Christian McCaffrey, 150 yards rushing. The only bright spot for the Pittsburgh Steelers was TJ Watt did have 3 sacks. So that right tackle side for the 49ers, Colton McKivitz, he's going to have to work on some technique because TJ Watt was able to get whatever he wanted. But Patrick Peterson did not have an interception. Yes, the Pittsburgh Steelers drove down the field to end the half, only down 20-7. But the 49ers with some takeaways. Drake Jackson had 3 sacks. I mean, Nick Bosa didn't show up on the stat sheet, but you could tell his impact was already made. And I'm here to say it. I know that the Cowboys, they are beating the Giants. Sunday Night Football, the 49ers are the best team in the NFC. The Eagles did get a big win over the Patriots, and that was a 25-20 win in Foxborough. Yeah, that was a big win. And then the Cowboys, big win over the Giants in the Meadowlands. Those are the three teams in the NFC. I mean, if you look at the Packers, yes, they did get a pretty decent win over the Chicago Bears. It doesn't matter who the quarterback is, if it's Brett Favre or Aaron Rodgers. Jordan Love, the Jordan Love era begins in Green Bay, and they defeat the Chicago Bears 38-20. Going over some of the other games in the NFL, Baltimore has no problem with the Houston Texans in C.J. Stroud's rookie debut, but J.K. Dobbins out with a torn Achilles. This Baltimore Ravens team is snake bitten. Their best running back goes out in week 1. I feel bad for the Ravens, but the Ravens do get the victory. Big surprise of the day was the Cleveland Browns beating the Cincinnati Bengals 24-3. Joe Burrow had one of his worst games, especially coming off of that massive contract, and he did not perform. You had the Tampa Bay Buccaneers getting the win over Minnesota on the road. Baker Mayfield didn't look too bad. I mean, maybe the Buccaneers might keep Mike Evans after all, and there is life after Tom Brady. The Saints get the 16-15 win over the Tennessee Titans. Ryan Tannehill threw 3 picks. It's time to bench him. He's only hurting the Titans. You got Will Levis right there in the wings. He needs to be the new starter. I say week 2, you put Will Levis in there because Tannehill cost the Titans this game. You got the Jacksonville Jaguars beating the Indianapolis Colts. Anthony Richardson making his debut. He actually didn't have a bad game, but it was Calvin Ridley getting his first touchdown in 2 years. And Callaway's Tank Bigsby, first NFL touchdown of his career. Plenty more to come as Tank Bigsby had an impact for the Jacksonville Jaguars. They got a big game next week hosting the Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs, who have an extra couple days to prepare, but this game is in Jacksonville. So hopefully the Jaguars can get this momentum to try to go to 2-0. The Washington Commanders defeated the Arizona Cardinals 20-16. You had the Raiders spoiling the debut of Sean Payton on the road, getting the 17-16 victory as Jimmy Garoppolo actually did not look all too bad for the Las Vegas Raiders. This was the game of the day. The Miami Dolphins in a shootout beating the Los Angeles Chargers 36-24. And how about Tua Tagovailoa? Wow. 466 yards, 3 touchdowns. Man, I wish I had him on my fantasy team. Wait, I do. And I accidentally benched him. I had Justin Fields. What was I thinking? There's a reason why I don't win in fantasy football anymore. All right. You got the Rams beating the Seahawks 30-13. It seemed like Seattle was in control of this game, and then the Rams just blew this game out. And Cooper Kupp, he's on the IR for the next 4 weeks. So that's not good. I talked about the Eagles beating the Patriots, and then we got the Monday night game tonight. So with that being said, I will go ahead and recap the Monday Night Football game tomorrow. I'm going to have special guests from BTV Sports, Kevin Eckelberry. He is going to be on the show tomorrow, and then I'm going to replay the high school football scoreboard show that Thrift Behringer and I did just earlier, about a couple hours ago. I will replay that later this week, and we will also replay the Glenwood Gators Coaches Show. And don't forget, Thrift Behringer and I will be here once again live on Georgia Alabama Sports Live for the scoreboard show Tuesday night. We might have a special guest. Hopefully we can get somebody on there. And that's always great. Those Tuesday night shows, we try to get a special guest. So that is going to be great. I want to thank Ryan O'Neill back at the station for giving me this opportunity to fulfill my dream, having a sports talk radio show here on an incredible radio station, WQEE 99.1 FM. Stay tuned for Braves Country today with Mac McGee and the Armchair Quarterbacks. Hey, the Braves, they defeated the Pirates 5-2, and they make it to the postseason. Their magic number goes down to 5 to try to clinch the division, and that would be 6 straight. No, it's not 14 straight, but 6 straight. Not too bad for the Atlanta Braves right now with the best record in baseball at 93-49. And they take 2 out of 3 against the Pittsburgh Pirates. Mac McGee will talk all about it on today's show, so you don't want to miss it. Hope everybody has a great rest of your night. And I am out of here. Good night, everybody.